Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is the last day of March, so March 31st, and this is another one of our monthly SIG CLI calls. Today's host is Eddie. So Eddie, take it away from here.
Okay. Oh, can you co-host me, please? Does anyone have any issues or PRs they want to start with?
Done.
I was just mentioning that I was looking for PRs stuck in the Kubernetes repo, and I have a bunch of long time run issues. So I'm wondering if you should go and start looking those right now or later.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think we only have a few new ones, so let's tackle those real quick, and then we can jump into that.
Okay, I see my name anyway here, just in the first one, right?
Yes. Cube control diff external command doesn't support subcommands.
Yeah, this is the specific case, if I remember correctly, that a user wants to use different like a schema. Let me try to remember this one. And he ended up using kube control init diff. He created a kube control init diff to work around. I asked him. Yeah, I asked him. I will need to review it, again and see if I can help him to move forward.
Okay, don't be afraid to close it.
Okay.
It looks like I'm looking at the kubectl neat diff, and almost at the top it mentions the managed fields, which are now hidden by default in kubectl. So I think one of the issues that they were trying to address was just that, to get rid of some of the unnecessary fields, managed fields. I'm inclined to say that based on what was written in the last comment, I'll be supporting to close this one.
Okay. I'll let you handle it, Doug, if you want to take another look.
All right.
Okay, 1033. We didn't have any new folks on the call, did we? Did anyone want to introduce themselves before we go any further? Doesn't look like it. Cool. Kube control create config map, forbid multiple from end file flags.
Isn't that flag an array which basically allows it to be passed several times?
Good question.
No, it doesn't look like it's array. So that actually might go all the way down to Cobra and its implementation of passing multiple times the same flag.
Create config map, yeah.
Yeah, it's a string var from create config line 141. So that might be
Yeah, that variable, there's only a single variable that it gets written into in that command. So there's only going to be one stored.
This person has already done the work. They just haven't opened a PR. That is a solution. Cobra must have a mechanism to handle that though, right? I feel like we shouldn't have to handle that ourselves.
that doesn't look like a right approach, because he's basically checking whether because if you look under the covers, n-vile source variable is just a string.
Yeah.
So his approach is basically checking whether the string is longer than one
character.
which is wrong.
Yeah.
So it's just like Sean mentioned, there has to be an internal mechanism within Cobra which allows to pass a flock multiple times, and we only read the last one. I'm not sure if what other tools are doing and what might be the answer to this, but this won't be a problem with kubectl, but with the Cobra itself. So that might be a little bit deeper. I would be curious to see what happens with tools such as, I don't know, Git or I don't know, any other of the bash, default bash tools, and what happens if you try to specify the same flag twice.
Yeah,
If
I'll write that
error-
up for Lau.
So he probably would have caught his error had he added a unit test as well.
He did add a test, add test for multiple ends. Yeah, that's not testing the right thing. Okay, I'll type it up for Lau to look at. Okay, last one that's new. This is 1035. Alt can I provides potentially misleading output with impersonate. This sounds familiar.
There will be two sides of this. One, if auth can I is properly passing the impersonation flag, and on top of that, whether because basically what we do when we invoke can I is we are sending a request to the server describing what the user wants to achieve. So the default way of passing the impersonation flag might not work for these commands, because the impersonation is by default a header that is then being read by the server and properly applied, which not necessarily has to happen during the can I check. So yeah, it seems like a bug. I think we have a separate one for impersonation when you're using the in-cluster config, because in-cluster config ignores additional flags. We don't have a proper merge in place for the in cluster configs.
Okay. That is the last new one. Cool. Doug, did you want to drive to go through old issues?
Yeah, I can do it. Which issue you want? Actually, I need to disconnect a little bit early this
Okay.
meeting. I have another meeting, so I cannot do that.
Okay, let's see. So if we look at SIG CLI, and then we can sort by oldest. I'm sure we're going to find a lot of stuff in here. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to punt that. That's not us for now. Allow admins to implement. What's that much?
Hold on, if the first one is not us, why not just dropping the SIG CLI flag from there?
That's fair.
Label, because it's a request for API. It has nothing to do with us, unless it gets to a point where we need to add such a flag or functionality rather.
I can eventually land in kube control 6 CLI.
Actually, after this one, I have another one that maybe it's good to have you guys around discussing it as well. Just put in the chat.
I'm going to leave us tied because it will require touching kube control at some point if we take it. I will open yours, Doug.
There is one from Katrina as well. I just saw her comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a comment on the first or 2 issues ago that we were looking at with the Cobra repeated flags. They wanted us to throw an error, but it would also be possible to just consume values from all copies of the flags. Cobra would make it possible. I found an example.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, yes, this one, we do have to take care of this one.
Yeah, so I just wondering what you guys think about it. If we should handle this one to have the same behavior between CLI and API. You know, this guy, if you understood correctly, he works for Waveworks, so for a CNI provider. And this is just one patch for him. He wants to change. This one was just about documenting what he got it, but still more work to do.
What his ask is basically to have a different default. Or to have the library default similar to what kubectl default is.
Yeah, something like that.
So if you look, I'm totally. I
commented it.
If I'm correct, we don't have a proper new method for the helper, which could set the defaults similar to what kubectl does, and then every consumer could use it. This way we could, first of all, we wouldn't break anyone. We would provide a sort of constructor which is compatible with what kubectl drain does, and we could just use that in kubectl drain. So yeah, definitely it should be a simple thing to do. So basically something like new helper type of a thing. Like this is one of the reasons why all of the option structures in all the kubectl commands have a new, I don't know, apply options, just to have the default set properly for the command to work. I would probably advise doing the same for that helper.
Did you get that, Doug? You have enough?
Yeah, I think that my understood is that we are okay to move forward with this one. Right, Matthew?
Yeah, just create a method that does the defaults. Basically something like new default or new helper.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and Brian, the author of that issue, is really good. He's helped me a bunch of times, so feel free to just hit him up, ask him what he wants. He's really smart.
All right.
Allow admins to implement controller loops from the CLI. This is from Clayton. So this is like a watch with exec. We've seen this a few places, right?
Yeah, we have something like that in OpenShift. Clayton wrote it. It's called observe, which basically is just that. It says it basically sets up a watch against a particular resource, and then you can either create scripts on top of it or do whatever you're interested in.
I feel like we closed an issue in the main kube controller repo. And so we didn't want this at some point. Maybe not.
I mean, that was at the time when having stuff like that was, we didn't have plugins. If I remember correctly, the date for it on that issue was 2015. I would be okay with closing that one. And if there will be people interested in it, they can go the plugin, and if with sufficient support, and get it in OpenShift. kubectl, sorry. Old habits.
Okay.
Especially that I haven't seen any traction on this issue, I think it's okay to close this one.
Stricter server-side validation of JSON entities. What the? Oh, Ricardo was on here.
Yeah, he just shared to me before the meeting started here that he's conflict with another meeting and lunchtime, etc. So he'll be working in whatever we assign to him, he said.
Okay, I think I know what Jordan wants us still to be implemented, because what we currently have is we have client-side validation based on open API. The problem with this approach is that we will only report about typos and stuff like that. I'm not sure if the unknown fields are still reported, if they will raise errors. So for example, if you try to create a pod and you made a typo with, instead of spec, you will type spec with 2C. I'm not sure if the client-side validation will pick it up, or the server-side validation. We will most likely silently ignore this bit. But since this is about server-side validation, I'm not sure if we want to be on this one.
Yeah, that seems to be explicitly about the server side. Like client side, like you said, we use typed entities to check for, I think it would catch on fields on the client, but if it made it to the server, then the fields just get dropped, and that's what it's complaining about, but that's not us.
Yeah, it's remove SIG. There we go. Okay. Okay, I took us off it. But Jordan can put it back on if he wants. Refactor kube control to decouple command framework from business logic. Ooh, Sean. An old one.
Isn't that one where we have Sean has an issue in kubectl, which basically is not so grand, but basically says decouple kubectl from Cobra.
Yeah, it's decoupling the options from the Cobra command so that you can reuse the options, say in a controller somewhere if you wanted.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure how close that applies to what Brian is writing about here.
I think that's basically the idea. And basically,
Yeah, actually, I think I'm going to get permission and time from my company to be able to dig into this like within the next week.
cool.
So apologies that it's taken so long to get to it, but I think that I'm actually gonna be able to spend some serious time on it.
Nice. If you come up with a good pattern for what that could look like, Sean, that's an easy help wanted issue to get some folks working on too.
Cool.
Yeah, it is all about having a pattern and then create a issue, and people will be Doc and Ricardo were driving a lot of work related to create commands, and I literally was approving majority of their PRs without even looking too much on it.
Yeah, and my approach was going to be just do it for one, see, finally, work it out with everybody, make sure we're all on the same page, and then we can apply it to hopefully all the other commands.
Nice. So this is exec by pod label. I think it will have to wait for our 1.0 launch.
So can you go back to the original example? Because what we currently have is a lot of the workloads support picking a default container, default pod within it, and most of the commands do so similarly. So if you do kubectl exec deployment, it will pick the right pod and get into it. So I think that should be done. With labels, I think it might be a little bit more complicated. But I think it would be nice if someone could give it a try. Actually, let me quickly go into the code what we have behind exec. But if we have there the necessary method to pick the pod, yeah, there is an executable pod function, which is basically attachable pod for object, which knows how to get the right object for a particular type of resource, but that will only work for the built-ins. It can even get a right pod from the service. So a lot is possible.
Can you exec on multiple pods, or is it only we restrict it to one?
So you basically exec a workload, deployment daemon set whatever, and we pick the first pod in the group. You can always override the particular pod by manually specifying which one you want, but we pick a default one. Well, the first in the code, but the first is sorted by, let me quickly check, but I'm pretty sure that the sort by is by time. Yeah, there's a slightly complicated method
Yeah, I went through that at one point.
which figures out which one is an active pod. So I'm inclined to close it. If somebody will complain that it doesn't work or that there are some issues, we can always revisit that one.
I'll let you close that one.
Okay, what is the number?
I'd linked it.
Okay. Okay. I'll double check and I'll go ahead and close this one.
Even the exec docs mention the ability to exec services and deployments. So
Even
it is in
better.
there.
I think one of the asks in that issue though was to be able to exec on multiple pods at the same time, but that's a bigger feature request. And yeah.
Yeah, that's not something that we want to do.
Okay, by default, merge more kubeconfig files.
Ed, I need to disconnect, but do you mind to assign this one to me, because looks like it related to the work I did, right?
That's what I was
regarding
thinking too.
Yeah, so I can look later. All right, thank you guys.
Yep. Later, buddy. Okay. Remove non-mergeable fields from kubeconfig, such as preferences.
I think this one and the previous one should be worked on together because they are touching the similar idea of merging.
Yeah, and I still think we should have some sort of like kube settings file that people can use as well to specify defaults. We got to get a kep for that.
Yeah, that would be good.
I was really surprised at the pushback on Doug's kep for the XDGG config thing.
It's not about the pushback. It's about the backwards compatibility and the scope of changes that it might require to align everyone on the path. That's the problem. If we would come up with this sooner, it would be easier. It's the scope of work, not only for us, but for the entire basically community and outside other consumers. That's what's the biggest problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to close that kep at some point then. I'll put it on the agenda to talk about finally so we can make a decision there. I did not know you could put code blocks in a title. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a recent thing.
Okay. Are not glob friendly.
So that's slightly strange in that you can specify an entire directory that maybe got implemented later, but his example is, I want to, create an entire directory full of these files when a directory already it works now, doesn't it?
Oh, I think what Brian meant here is that globbing is handled not by kubectl, but it's handled by the bash, which basically means if you pass -f whatever star.yum, the star.yum gets replaced by the bash with all the files matching the glob. So the execution, the invocation turns to be -f 1 yum, 2 yum, 3 yum, 5 yum. Yeah, that last comment from Antoine seems reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll just leave it.
Maybe it would be good for first time.
You can specify multiple -fs, right?
I don't remember.
You mentioned that in the comments that we were just looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if we could somehow throw different set of bugs into different buckets, such as good first time issues, or maybe that we just need to have like help wanted for this one.
We have a project board that we never used, and Lori is supposed to help us with, so that might be a good place to start.
Yeah, but that still needs, I would want to have like backlog with good first time issues, and then, well, theoretically we already have help wanted versus first time issues, and everything that is not first time issues is good for contributors to work on. But those with an explicit first time issues are good for newcomers to pick on. Maybe we should just start labeling those as such. That would give us at least 2 buckets, which is, I think, sufficient. Yeah, there are.
For issues like this, it could be useful for us to just, as a SIG, indicate that we have accepted a given solution for somebody to work on. Because I know, like, if I came to this issue, I saw it's from 2015, I'd be a little hesitant to just pick it up, you know?
I'm personally leaning towards the last solution that Antoine described there, because the other part might be problematic.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. And move kube control client logic into server. Ooh. Did we do enough of this yet?
It sounds like a massive umbrella issue.
We have
Yeah.
server-side apply.
We did it for apply, yeah.
There are some things that we do want to move to the server, but not everything.
I'm inclined to close this and say we could address these individually if we want.
I was about to say that we're for both of the commands being called out. First of all, I agree with the statement that Clayton mentioned when you were scrolling, where he said that we don't want to do long-running server-side operation, first of all. Secondly, we changed kubectl so that people can actually vendor in the code behind particular commands. Scaling has changed so that it is actually easier these days because you can use a generic scale client for every resource that supports scaling. And particular commands won't be solved by moving to server. So yeah, go ahead and close. Unless you want me to do it.
Yeah, I'll let you do it.
Okay.
You had a better reason. I was just gonna close it.
I see there's also an issue already split out about drain, and that's still open.
Okay. Cube control replace or create would be helpful. No, that goes against idempotent commands.
If someone wants to do it, kubectl apply is my answer. I recently closed a similar request against OpenShift by saying use apply basically. Yeah.
Oh, okay, it was closed. Why was it reopened?
So there's people there. I think there were some who complain about the very large last applied annotation, and that you have these massive. I think their use case is they have these massive config maps that have doubled the size because of the last applied annotation. And this will resolve itself with the server-side apply, as long as the managed fields isn't too big.
Managed field will be created always. Doesn't matter whether you're using create, apply, or whatever.
Yes. Oh, so the replace is going to have the managed fields too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer is use server-side apply. Close.
There's somebody in there asking that they actually don't want cooperative field management. They're trying to overwrite all the server-side state when they do this.
Sorry to interrupt. I interrupted. My bad. There's a force to basically say I own it all now. Or any conflicts, force conflicts, just override them with server-side apply.
Oh, with server-side. Okay, cool.
Sean, you want to close this one with, statement that server-side apply is the way to go it if you want to have a hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
You commented on this a week ago, Munch.
Or maybe that was actually me saying over here.
I am all for closing issues because they can always be reopened by people who want to do the work.
Yeah.
We should be able to generate YAML with comments. Cube control generate.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I would want to see. I'm not sure how much we can do and how much is required on the server side to be done. Because even if kubectl will maintain the comments, it is the server that has to maintain them as well.
So, I mean, that's something we can do with the OpenAPI documentation, right?
Right, but
We talked about doing that with edit.
Yeah, but the problem is, yeah, we talked about it for edit to provide comments for fields. But I think this is about maintaining the comments, the user provided comments on the resources, which is currently not possible because down the road, this gets translated into protobuf, which is stored in etcd, which would mean that protobuf would have to have the ability to store the comments. And I'm not sure if that's feasible.
I don't think this is asking to preserve user comments. Unless I'm misreading it.
Was the YAML v3 library not released when this discussion was happening?
That's the
Nope, I doubt it.
there's a lot that's going to have to happen with upgrading YAML to v3. I've been through this a lot with upgrading Cobra and Jordan and stuff, and we're probably staying on v2 forever. I can't. I don't think this is saying they want to preserve user comments, right?
Yeah, I'm just slowly reading it, and I think it is about, like you said, inline documentation for each of the fields in the generated object, which would basically be kubectl edit with inline comments coming from OpenAPI.
Which we could do client side very easily.
Yes, we just need someone to actually do it.
Okay, I will type something up for that. How are we doing on time? 13 minutes.
I would look, yeah, the overall kubectl help overall. I'm inclined to close it. It seems pointless to have them opened as an umbrella issue. If someone is happy to also to improve that situation, I'm open PRs. actually improving the docs per command, and I'll be happy to merge them. Like not typos, but big PRs where you're improving the docs. These are more than, I'm more than happy to merge stuff like that.
Kube control create F directory doesn't create services first, violating config best practices. I didn't even know that was a best practice.
I think we go in alphabetical order.
We don't even have a best practices markdown file anymore.
I wonder what Jordan did that in that closed PR. I'm pretty sure that the answer will be we don't do any ordering other than alphabetical. Oh,
If we started doing ordering, it would probably balloon to be about a lot more object types than just these two, and we'd have to handle custom resources. And it's a much bigger can of worms than just that issue implies.
yeah. And especially the last one that you mentioned, the CRDs, is the biggest one because we don't know the ordering for CRDs. I'm inclined to close it.
Yeah, I used to
Okay.
work on a deploy tool, and we did do some primitive ordering, and we basically had buckets, and we let CRD authors tell us which bucket they wanted their CRD to go in. But to actually to establish the relationships between all possible object types dynamically is hairy.
Oh, that's the
it's-
solution that we're using internally. Just use 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 3, whatever to order them because you have the knowledge about the ordering.
Right, each individual user doing the operation is effectively taking care of it.
Yeah. It's like with export when each and every single user had a different set of fields in his mind being removed by the export.
If you send one big YAML file, it applies them in order that of the YAML file, right?
Yep.
So even if they get, even if for instance, a CRD gets applied before the custom resource, there still has to be work done in the background to make sure that there still has to be like a wait for that CRD to be, just because you get a 200 back or that it applied correctly doesn't mean that all the work has happened in order to get the CRD in, I think.
Yeah,
I think
that's totally true. And that can be true of other resources with dependencies as well.
Yeah, if some resources need an entire controller loop, then you may have to do a kubectl wait before you can apply other resources.
So are we in favor of closing it then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does someone want to type up a good comment, Katrina?
Sure.
Thank
Did you
you.
paste this link in the chat? Could you?
There you go. Make kube control apply, check for stale input.
So we have a okay, so there is a resource. They talk about a resource version.
I'm inclined to close it. And just say that this is possible with the server-side apply. It will merge whatever stale input you have on your side with whatever the server has. In the worst case, use patch if you care. But it wasn't touched, it wasn't commented in a very long time. I'm in favor of closing this one.
Sounds good.
V2 API proposal, desired versus actual. Working group apply.
I would leave it as is.
Not about to close it issue from Tim.
It's not about Tim, about the scope of the issue.
Yeah. Need simple kube control command to see cluster resource usage. Top.
Yeah, that's literally what I'm thinking about. And on top of that, you probably should have some kind of a monitoring stack deployed. So I'm not sure how relevant the data that we can present is. Yeah, there's top nodes and the describe nodes. I think I would just close this as is. It has sufficient numbers about top nodes and about describe nodes that
Might be worth reading through the more recent comments in more detail, because there sure are a lot of watchers on this based on the number of like reactions to the issue. It's hundreds.
it looks like this is a decent, that kube capacity is a decent plugin. And so the path of creating a plugin first might be, we might be able to push off using that.
from what I see, different people have different expectations, both with regards to what's being reported versus what they have in the cluster.
So this issue apparently is a top Google search result for something.
Yeah, this comment nicely describes my fear. In order for this tool to be truly useful, it should detect all Kubernetes device plugins deployed on the cluster and show usage for all of them. CPU mem is definitely not enough. There's also GPUs, TPUs for machine learning, Intel, QAT, and probably more I don't know about. Also, what about storage? I should be able to easily see what was requested and what is used, ideally in terms of IOPS as well. That's a comment from last year. Not gonna happen.
Seems like there's like a couple different issues in this one though. Like one of them is like my pod is pending. I want to know, will it ever start? And the other one is like the more general issue of I want to see the resources of all my nodes. So I don't know if that can be separated out or one is worth doing.
Could we ask for a
That
cap here?
first-
Like if any of these hundreds of people are super interested in a particular condition of this, to propose it more formally?
I'm happy to see this being solved as a plugin. And if the plugin gets sufficient support, we can include that as a default. On top of that, to answer your first question, Brian, about why my pod is pending or why my pod landed on this node and not the other one, I have a team member that is working in SIG scheduling that will be doing just that, because currently the decision from the scheduler are very deep in the scheduler logic and are hidden even from the cluster administrator, because you can get the decisions if you run scheduler with like V10, which is insane. We're hoping to expose some kind of reasonable information about why my pod landed here, most likely through annotation, but it's to be decided. That's something that we will be working in the upcoming weeks, months, let's say. But that's again, that's not SIG CLI, but rather SIG scheduling, because they know the reasoning behind a particular decision.
How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Throwing in a little Amazonism in there, bias for action. All right, I'm submitting that. I imagine the last comment on this was 22 minutes ago, so this is definitely showing up in Google search results. So I'm expecting blowback for closing this, but it's not a productive thread. So.
Yeah, in the worst case, we can always, if people will start complaining, we can always block further comments by reaching out to SIG contrabacks. There's too many different opinions, and I'm worried that this will be a very opinionated approach. Yeah, that's a good statement.
All right. I'm gonna get smacked.
Eddie, you have to get used to it being a SIG lead. I'm still getting smacked for removing lots of run stuff, export, and similar. Okay, I think that was all. We're 3 minutes past top of the hour. Thank you very much all. Have a good one and see you in 1 week actually.
Thanks,
Bye,
team.
all.